Welcome to TrekTrav. I'm Trav. This is Season 1, Episode 8, Breaking the Ice. Let us get into this review. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Welcome to all the new subscribers. And I'd love to hear any questions you have about the episode. Write them down below. And whether you thought this was a good episode. So the opening scene is where we get to see sort of a more human-centered focus, which seems to follow through with a lot of this episode. It's sort of the B plot, but it's really fun to see this sort of information that's going on, or what they say to people. We get kids from Earth sending drawings they've done to the Enterprise. I think the biggest mistake in this bit is, why are they printing it up on paper? Like, surely they just look at it on pads. But there's some really funny moments where they draw T'Pol as having a really green face, and it's a sweet sort of, I want to say, Earth-blocked moment where the characters are sort of responding to Earth, and we get to sort of see the joy at them just being explorers. It's a bit fun, it's a bit wacky. The real story comes along when we get a comet that is flying past, and apparently the Vulcans don't know it's there, and they decide to go and mine it for, I believe it's deuterium. It might not be deuterium, but I believe it's deuterium that does it. In the episode, it also says this is the biggest comet that humans have ever seen, but it just seems a little bit wacky that that's the statement, and that's the reason they're going there. I think the just going, look, it's a cool comet, let's go have a look, is enough explanation. The biggest doesn't need to be there. So another plot, I think the children thing's more of like the C plot, actually. T'Pol gets a message from Vulcan. We don't see what it is, but we do see some excellent eye acting by Jolene Blalock. And that's the one thing, as an actor, that she has, that she really brings into her game throughout the entire series. That you can see in her eyes worry, but her face doesn't actually express that. But this is a mystery box, and I remember watching the episode originally and going, oh, what's this about? They got to recall her. We'd obviously seen that in the Andorian incident that she had actually got in trouble by the Vulcan High Command. So was this a recall? We don't really know, and it's set up as sort of like a mystery thing. We also find out that Vulcans aren't affected by caffeine, of which makes no sense, because why would Tuvok be Janeway's best friend? She loves her coffee. Loves it. And Tuvok doesn't? Is that what you're telling me? I reckon that Tuvok 100% started drinking caffeine when he met Janeway. We also learn that pecan pie is Trip's favourite food. And one thing about Enterprise, Season 1 in particular, is they seem to use food as a way to get character moments. There's another episode coming up where they use food as some sort of amazing character point, and it really doesn't show anything. I think it's one of those things that sort of runs out of fuss. So Travis and Malcolm are going down to the comet to drill for the new mineral, or a rare mineral, and they sort of talk about Travis being a pilot, which is great for him. Malcolm, we think, oh, maybe we might get some more. The comet plot is very background. This feels like a very Voyager-esque episode. It's a bit like the scientific stuff, or the excitement of space exploration, takes a backseat to character drama, which is fine if you have good character drama. So Hoshi comes in and tells Captain Archer that T'Pol has received a encoded message from Vulcan, and Archer goes, well, I've told her she needs to tell me about these things, they can't be secret. So he then goes, I need to see what this is. Hoshi's really against it, but Trip very, very much gets involved. There's a Vulcan ship hanging about. We learn that the Vulcans have been sort of around the whole time since the first voyage, and that they sort of appear and disappear, like they're watching what the Earth's people are doing. It's a really interesting little note that the Vulcans are still very mistrusted by Archer. Trip goes to Archer and is told, you need to open up this secret message to T'Pol. I need to know what's going on. Trip doesn't feel comfortable, and when he does open it, he feels extreme guilt, tells Archer this and goes, look, I don't want to deal with this. I feel like I've got my hand caught in a cookie jar. And Archer's like, well, don't tell me. Archer's the one who freaking told him to go and look in there. It should be Archer going, I need to know. But Trip has to deal with it. And this is where we get to see these instances where Trip is sort of forced to be into T'Pol's radar. And I very much think that they had a relationship on the plans from the very early on. And this is sort of the beginning of it in a way, where Trip is always forced into weird circumstances with T'Pol. So Trip goes to tell T'Pol that he opened the message and he knows what's going on. T'Pol is really, really agitated and really annoyed. And Trip's going, well, why didn't you send it through normal messages? And T'Pol is like, well, this is anyone else. And we find out in the episode that T'Pol is being told to come back to Vulcan to marry Kosa, whom she was betrothed to when she was a child. Because Vulcans somehow have arranged marriage, which doesn't logically make sense, really. But in terms of, they are big on culture and big on that sort of thing. So it's a bit wacky, in all honesty. It's really quite weird that they have that. But it makes for an interesting drama, and Trip tells her, and she's clearly agitated, and she needs to find someone to talk to, and the only one she can think of is Trip, because Trip already knows, so she won't get in trouble. It's, once again, putting Trip and T'Pol together in the same relationship. Archer decides to invite the Vulcan commander on board. It does not go well. There's a lot of tension. Archer's trying to be calm. Trip's actually the most calm, and T'Pol's the most calm. The Vulcan captain is a douchebag, but Archer sort of falls back into that racist territory with Vulcans again. And I get that there's a tension there and there's feelings there, but it seems like he sort of flip-flops on that level of agitation he has with Vulcans. He knows that they're watching. He knows and understands that it's a difficult time in terms of them trusting humans going out into space. But he just he gets a little too agitated, if you know what I mean. And then he just gets bitchy, outright bitchy. And it's an interesting scene, don't get me wrong. Although I think you'd find that it just seems like Archer's going a bit overboard. Like, you know the Vulcans are like this, why aren't you dealing with it in a different way? Malcolm and Trip are on the Comet. They set off an explosion so they can get to this mineral to set up the drill. They've built a snowman, of which Archer tells them off because the Vulcans are watching. The explosion alters the rotation of the comet, which means the sun is coming up soon, so they need to finish drilling really, really fast. And it's an interesting... It's clearly Planet Death, or if you know, Studio 9 at Paramount. And it's very, very fake snow, but it's an entertaining scene. I like anytime they're using the spacesuits, I think is really, really interesting. The spacesuits look fucking cool. Another weird scene in regards to T'Pol and Trip talking about her arranged marriage is Trip seems very much like, you need to go this way, and he has an opinion, and T'Pol asks for his opinion, but she doesn't want it, but she still takes it. And it's weird because I don't think T'Pol in this early time knows Trip well enough to really want his advice. It's a really odd sort of scene where she's trying to explain it. He's not understanding because he's culturally very biased. You wouldn't get involved in that. Travis and Malcolm are running back to the shuttle pod with the sample of the mineral that they've got. They manage to get to the shuttle pod, but the sun is literally rising upon them, causes the comet to crack. They fall down into it. Now, this is where our whole plot comes to it. Archer's misfeelings about the Vulcans and stuff force him to not want to get the Vulcans to help. They've fallen too deep. It's terrible. They try to use the grappler. Can I point out, the grappler is a really cool part of Star Trek Enterprise. Anytime they use the grappler, you're like, that is fucking cool. But it does not work this time. They're not using the transporters, which seems a bit weird. And it's all about Archer accepting that he's being prideful and arrogant, and T'Pol bringing that up to him is really, really good, because T'Pol's always sort of a counter to his pride and ego. And we suddenly see Malcolm and Travis risen up by a tractor beam. And I like that. I like that this forcing Archer to change his preconceptions. I think there should be more calling out of the Vulcans, and T'Pol should be the one to do that. But amazingly, she doesn't, I suppose because she's quite young comparatively to other Vulcans. She also says at the end of her speech to Archer, "You're human, you're free to choose," which is just the worst line. I get what they're trying to do, but it is a bad line. Archer tries to thank them. The Vulcan is a douchebag, turns to DePaul and goes in Vulcan language, and basically she is told, "You need to come back." It's weirdly rude. Like, I feel like Vulcans wouldn't be that rude. They'd just be honest and open. But I get this is a different type of Vulcan and from Vulcan times. T'Pol decides she's going nowhere. Who saw that coming? Star Trek, TNG era Star Trek very rarely change the status quo, especially in the first season. But she decides she's not going anywhere. She's staying on Enterprise. She tells them they're not going to be happy. Trip is also weirdly happy at this decision, I suppose because he gave the advice. And then we end on a really weird shot of T'Pol eating pecan pie, which I get. It's meant to symbolize she trusts Trip, but she's eating pecan pie? I don't understand. It's weird. There's a weird food obsession whenever they do character development in the first season of Enterprise. I don't know what it is. It's really weird. It's like Archer's obsession with... what's the sport he's obsessed with? Water polo. Really weird obsession that they have with these things. The episode's actually really good because they get the paintings from the children, or the drawings from the children, and they're really excited about it. Then they decide to record a Q&A for the kids back on Earth. I'm talking about this at the end because it's not really relevant to any of the other plots. But they have a Q&A for the kids back on Earth, and Archer answers questions about being out in space. Hoshi answers questions about communication. Trip gets a poop question, which I think is really realistic. Kids would ask about that stuff. Phlox obviously answers questions, and it's really fun to see how Earth is reacting to this exploration of space, how kids are excited about it. It's a shame that they didn't do this more in the first season, like it was amazing and it's the first time out there. But a lot of the time, they come across crap that's new, and it's been discovered by the Vulcans or someone else, or it doesn't feel like them going to places for the first time. It feels like them popping out after other people have stopped there. So it ruins that final frontierness of Enterprise, especially in Season 1. Although we did get to meet the Andorians for the first time, but the humans would have known about Andorians. It's weird that they come up with these stories about the firsts and how they're doing things, and like with the kids in this episode being excited about their voyage, which should be laid out throughout the series, but seem to be relegated to background stuff when they should be investigating new stuff for humans. It should be, and I think the problem with that is the Vulcans are very integral to that first season of Star Trek Enterprise. So it very much takes away from this being new space and just makes it like, oh, the humans are walking around in the Vulcans' playground sort of feel about it. And I think having aliens on board, although makes the characters more diverse and we have some cool aliens, I think it takes away from humans being the first. Phlox knows a lot of the species. T'Pol knows a lot of the species. So it sort of takes away from it. But it's one of those episodes I went back to, and I don't know whether you felt this watching these episodes, going back to this series and going, actually, this episode was quite good. Like, I remember first watching it and going, oh, it's a bit Voyager-like, but this was actually probably one of the better episodes of the season. It had a great story, A plot, B plot, C plot. The comet thing wasn't a huge surprise, but when they made the snowman into a Vulcan, I had a little bit of smile on my face. It's when Enterprise is firing on all cylinders, it's really good. But the problem is a lot of the time, their stories relegate to kind of Voyager-esque plot points. But that doesn't happen forever. It changes over the series. Especially when we get into Season 2, you will see a shift from Voyager-esque stories to Enterprise stories. Anyways, I've been Travis. Thank you to all the new subscribers. Like, comment, subscribe. Come back soon for the next episode, episode 9.